Hi, everybody. I'm a little early. So I just apparently the internet is having problems. Everything's having problems. I'm just um, apparently I thought it was at 5. I scheduled it for 4. Story of my life, or at least these days. So it is now 4. So I'm gonna wait just a few minutes for people to come in. If you're here, drop your name. Let me know who you are. I'm broadcasting with eCam and it may require you to tell it that. I'm not sure. Let me move Facebook over to my other monitor so that I can see the comments if they don't show up on this. Okay, move over here. There we go. Okay, now. So if you are here, go ahead and leave me. Hold on, I have to mute myself. There we go. So if you're here and you want to drop your name in the comments, let me know any questions that you have. I really just wanted to do this because I think there's a few reasons actually. I think we're living in the age of uncertainty. I'm sure that my changing the Facebook Live time for everybody I told it was 5 o'clock is not really helpful either. But that's the way it goes these days. I know from the very informal polls that I did that many of you don't know what's expected of you while you're closed. Many of us don't know how long we'll be closed. Hi, Amanda. I'm glad you're here. Many of us don't know how long we'll be closed. Many of us don't know a lot of things. And it's very stressful. It's very stressful not to know anything. I am calling this the age of uncertainty because that's where we seem to be at. But I thought I would, open a dialogue to talk about the things that you need and share some resources with you. Some you may have already seen, some are new. I'm actually going to post a new one today. And hi, Becky. And I also want to talk a little bit about some strategies that might help a little bit in terms of if you're sending work home or you're teaching from a distance and things like that. So I want to talk a little bit about what that means and give you some resources, but I also want to know from you what I can help with. Hi, Sarah. Hi, Meg. I'm so glad you're here. So if you're here, if you're just coming in, drop your comments. If you have questions, share them there. I'm going to start a little bit just by talking about, let me know, here's what I'd like to know first. Do you know, and if so, what's the answer, whether or not you have to provide instruction in the time that you're closed? So I know that when I did a poll in my stories, lots of people didn't know. Some people did. Hi, Laura from Scotland. Good to have you here. Many of the people that answered didn't know. It was about half and half almost. Didn't know what was expected of them. I've seen a lot of comments among teachers saying that they were told not to send things home and they would know in a week. I've seen comments of people who say, we've been told that we need to send things home, but our kids were already gone, so we don't know how to get it home. We've been told that we're going to have to teach by distance. We've been told all different kinds of things. So I thought it might be helpful, one, to let you know that you're not alone. You are not the only school that doesn't really know how we're going to navigate this, particularly if the school closures get longer. And so that's the first thing. You're not alone, and we can help each other. The second thing is to think about what that means in terms of, are you really providing distance learning or are you providing some kind of enrichment? Because I think for many of the classrooms that we teach, it's really difficult because we have students that may not be able to learn online, who may not be able to sit in front of a computer. And that puts a lot of pressure on families that are also trying to manage their situation and get childcare and try to figure out what's going on with their jobs and things like that. Not everybody has the ability to kind of just shut everything down and focus on e-learning. So I also know a lot of schools have said, don't do anything right now. We're going to do something once we have a plan. And I actually don't think that's a bad thing. I know that that uncertainty is really stressful for us, but I actually think in some ways giving people time to adjust to a lot of these changes is going to be really important. Because I've got concerns about doing distance learning with some of our students, and I've got concerns about doing distance learning and having the parents kind of be responsible for it. But let's talk a little bit about what that might look like. For some of you, you've been told to do take-home work. So you've been told to send work home that the students need to do. Many people have contacted me and said, you know, my kids don't do paper and pencil. So that didn't make a lot of sense for them. So I went through my resource library and I kind of pulled some things out that I thought would be useful in terms of things that we would be able to send home. And so for some of our students, there's a silverware matching task that the students could use to work on counting, but also work on setting the table. I think that it's useful for a lot of our students to practice some life skills. So I know there have been a few life skills kind of calendars. This is a task the student should do each day kind of things going around. Those are really kind of enrichment. We're not expecting any kind of data back. We're not expecting, you know, to be able to assess the student's skills, and we're not necessarily even being able to hold families accountable. I know in Florida, our governor said, you know, if we go longer than 2 weeks, which I expect that we will revisit the online issue. I recognize that there are people who are not going to be able to access that, and we're just going to have to figure it out. So everyone is figuring it out on the fly. It isn't just you. So if we're doing that kind of enrichment stuff, then we have one of the things that I'm really worried about with our students is, especially our students with autism or students with severe disabilities who have problems with communication, is I worry that they're going to lose the skills that they've gotten this year. And I'm particularly concerned that they'll lose their language skills. And so I tried to put some things together for that, and I'll share those in just a minute. And Meg just made a really, really good point that the biggest concern is compliance with the students' IEPs and holding case conferences. And that's another reason why a lot of districts are really struggling, is because if they offer online services to the general ed students, then they must provide that same amount of time and instruction in adapted instruction for their students with disabilities. And it's hard for them to know exactly how that's going to look. So we've got that issue. That is one of the reasons why some of them are saying don't send anything home, because we don't want people to think that we're sending home work to the gen ed kids and we're not providing that kind of instruction for our students with special ed. I do think to some degree we're going to come to a point where there is going to be more distance learning. I know that it is somewhat possible, but we do have to have facilitators. And right now, those facilitators are family members, which can be great or can be not. Just really depends. And certainly the compliance with the IEPs, holding case conferences. The great thing is the case conferences are easier to do virtually. We can have IEP meetings virtually, but we can't necessarily, it's the instruction that I think is hard. So for enrichment, I think it's a little bit easier. So one of the things I'm concerned about is that they're going to lose their language. So I created some scavenger hunts for students to do with their family members, and I created questions, and I'll actually show them to you. They're going to go up tonight. And I tried to choose materials that they could find in their house, because I do think that many of our students need to practice vocabulary of things that are in their regular environment. I've lost my scissors. So this is really two pieces. One is the student's card that they can go around and they have to find a spoon, a plate, a pan, a mug, those kinds of things. And then they have to, these are discussion questions for the family members to ask about those items. So what is it? What color is it? Show me which one goes on the stove. Which one do you use to cut? Which is round? Which do you drink from? So it's working on some of those expanded language kinds of concepts with them, with their family. And it just gives a little bit of direction for them. There are 10 of these. So my thought was that they would last for at least 2 weeks. And I think they could probably be repeated. I would also use them. So there's the closet, the bedroom. Now, if you have a student who is verbal, then they can answer those questions verbally. But if you have a student who is nonverbal and working on this kind of language, then they can point. And so that was one of the reasons that I included the pictures, that and our students aren't always readers. So I thought that that might be a way just to get some language interaction going on between family members and the student and give them something structured to do and allow them to explore their environment. And I did a nature walk as well. I did a crafts scavenger hunt, a bathroom scavenger hunt, things like that. So those will go up tonight. I am also adding in, I just outlined 3 basic games, again, that can be done with things that you find around the house. And this is, I like to do Magical Mystery Bag. And Magical Mystery Bag is really just putting common items in a container, pulling them out, and then talking about them. And again, I've given them different things, different discussion questions that they can talk about with them. Playing Memory Match with cards is another one where they can count the items. And then Simon Says, which didn't print because they can work on following one-step directions. And so those are something, they will be up for free in the resource library tonight. I will probably also put them for free in my TPT store. So I'll come back and put that link on this video. And so that's something that even if they're not doing the language piece of it, this is something that families could use to have their child, let's go see if we can find a rock. Let's go see if we can find a tree. That kind of stuff. So even for your younger guys, I think this would make sense. And I've tried to make it so it really kind of goes across the ages based on the kind of language that they're working on. I will also link to the blog post that I did that has the resource library materials highlighted with things that you can do. And I'm actually going to pull up a couple of those in a minute. If you are doing distance learning with instruction, then hopefully your district is going to give you some guidance on that. But also hopefully you will, I'm going to leave it to the district to figure out the internet issues with that, because certainly we do have access issues with families being able to access things. But there's really kind of, I'm not going to go into this in a lot of detail. And if you're in the Special Educator Academy, I'm actually doing a whole like mini workshop on ways to do distance learning. And so that you guys will have some more specifics, but just to give you some ideas, you could have a Zoom window. So similar to a Facebook Live, Zoom is offering their service for free. And let's say you use Unique, but you need to walk somebody through how to use it. You could have that as well. You could administer some verbal instruction, certainly not physical prompting, in an online kind of face-to-face. So there's 2 kinds of distance learning. I've taught distance learning for, I don't know, 15, 20 years now, to graduate students and undergraduate students. So it's the same thing. You either have synchronous, which means that we're talking to each other at the same time, or asynchronous, which is kind of like if you put comments on a Facebook post and I reply 2 hours from now. Some of our students could do that take-home work that we were talking about. That's an asynchronous opportunity. You don't have to be online at the same time. I know some of you are talking about using online platforms like Zoom, like Moodle, like I don't know, there's a ton of them, to be able to connect face to face and do some instruction. There's a couple of things that I would think about with that I think might be helpful. And I'll be honest, this is not as well thought out as it will be, hopefully, eventually in my head. One is send home a schedule. Send home a schedule for the families of obviously when you're going to be online and all that kind of stuff, but send home a visual schedule for your students that shows them. So if you're going to work with them for an hour in a synchronous video, then send home, first we're going to do math, then we're going to do reading, then we're going to do writing, and then I'll say goodbye. But send home those visuals with them so that they can see. You see, I have an agenda up on my screen. Part of that is my visual cue to remember what I'm going to talk about. Part of it is that I think everybody wants to know more and more what we're doing at what time. So I find it helpful to have an agenda. So you may do some reading instruction. You may read a story to them live and ask questions and get an answer. Now, if you have a nonverbal student, make sure you send the communication tools or have them so that the family can download them so that they can respond. And you can use their AAC in that way, or have visuals that you're placing on the screen that they are pointing to so that you can actually get a response from them if they are nonverbal. There are some software options, and I see all your questions. Like I saw one about BCBAs, and I'll talk about, I'm not sure I'm the best person to talk about ethical issues because I haven't talked to the board, but I'll be happy to address that in a minute. But if you are doing behavioral kinds of stuff, there's Discrete Trial Trainer. There are some online options. There's TeachTown. There's, if you're using the Unique and News to You, those have online options that your students can complete with you. So maybe you're in a Zoom window and they have Unique open and they're completing their tasks with feedback from you as they go. So if you're doing synchronous work, send home the visuals of how you're going to structure that time, so that they can know what to expect. I would also send home a list of potential reinforcers that are effective for a student that they might have around the house. And then you may want to do a short video for the families about how to help the student, how to reinforce the student for staying at the computer and participating. And how, because they're going to have to deliver the reinforcer, assuming that praise is not a reinforcer for the student. You could even use a token board where you're putting the tokens on and then mom's getting the final reinforcer, if that's something that your students are used to. So pull in those strategies that have worked for your students, and then let's figure out how to get that information of how you use them to the families, or to whoever the facilitator is. Because I will say, even if there are some students with severe disabilities who are enrolled in online programs, but one of the things they have to have is a facilitator. So sometimes that's the parent, sometimes it's somebody else. I think we're going to have the same situation here. The hard part is just going to be, I don't know how you tell families that were in public school that they have to have a facilitator home with the kid. So I can't answer that issue. So if you're doing that kind of instruction, you're also going to want to make sure that you have something that you're getting back or observing to be able to assess. Because if you're actually going to replace school instruction with online instruction, we're going to have something that gives us data to make decisions about. And so I would look for permanent product, and maybe they do the permanent product when they're with you. Because the hard part is going to be, or maybe it's permanent product with a work product sticker already on it that you've sent home, and you've talked to the parents about how to check off what kinds of prompting they've needed. So whoever the facilitator is also going to need some facilitation. You could also think about during that time that you could work on like a morning meeting kind of thing. Send home, and if I can find time to do it, I will make one of these. Send home just a calendar page and have the parents talk about what day of the week it is, what day of the month it is, cross off the days as we go. They could even make a list of what we're going to do today and cross things off. So that may help to give some structure to that. So it's going to be a learn as we go because this isn't done that much. And it's certainly new to all of us to learn the new platforms. Many of you have families that do not have a computer. So for those who do, and for those of you that need to be able to send things electronically, if you haven't heard me say this before, if you own any of my products or you have anything from my resource library or my free products, you are welcome to put those on Google Drive for a student or on a class management site for a student and a family to log into. You can't put it on your school's Google Drive for everybody else to access, but you can definitely send them home. You can definitely send home a hard copy. You can send home an e-copy if you're emailing it home. As long as it's protected in some way so it's not going to the whole world, that's fine. And I want them to be able to use that. So definitely, that's fine. I've changed my terms of use. The blog post that I will post below this has the new terms of use linked in it. So those are some beginning thoughts. Let me take a couple questions and then I'll talk a little bit about resources. Okay. And Laura has, I think what's has happened for a lot of folks that we've been told to prepare home learning packs or prepare for online learning. So let's just prepare for everything all at one time because that'll reduce our stress. Found out today we have to write lesson plans the parents can implement at home, plus be available and initiate check-ins. So early childhood special ed, ABA classroom in Missouri. Okay. So that's also not an unusual thing that we've seen, that you have to write lesson plans that the parents are going to implement. I just don't know how that's going to become instructional time because I don't know how you're going to assess it. And I think that may come later, but I do know that there are many of you who have to be available to your families at certain times of day. So you can do it obviously online, but you could also do it using something like Remind. Remind is a free service that you can sign up, that you can set up a class for, and then you can send group text messages to your families. They can sign up from their phones and they don't have your phone number, and you can put office hours so that you can say at this time it's going to notify me that they've texted and at this time it's not. So you can set up that time. Apparently you can do something similar with Class Tag. And you can also do some of that back and forth with Seesaw. I don't know how much of it is real time because I haven't used Seesaw for that purpose before. Let's see. Meg says, our district is going to e-learning and are expected to provide work online every day. We started it today, but I teach preschool, so we sent home a packet of activities. I'm also going to try to make some simple sorting paper tasks because I know you're not going to make an individual. It's one thing to make file folders when you are using them for your whole class. It's a whole other thing to make them if you have to make a set for every kid. So I'm trying to think of some ways to make it so that you can just send the paper home. The parents can do it. Cut and paste will work for that. There's probably some other things that'll work for that, but it would be nice to be able to get some product back eventually so you can assess it in some way. I don't know. I would think if you're doing preschool too, you might want to do something like do a morning meeting where you are going over the calendar, going over what's going to happen today, maybe working on some basic skills, read a story, have them point to the things in the story so you could build some literacy into that online type of thing if you've got that requirement. Found out today we have to write lesson plans. The parents can, oh, I just did that one. Sorry, I'm not paying attention. Amanda says they're preparing for distant learning. Okay. Naomi says, I would love some ideas on functional life skills for non-reading, non-pen and paper tasks. from British Columbia in Canada. Thank you. Our schools were just suspended until further notice. And I understand Ontario's out for the rest of the year from somebody that I know up there. I would look at let me share. I'm going to share my screen really quickly if I can remember how to do that. Let me find the page. I have too many windows open. Okay, what I've done is made a calendar, and I'm going to include it in this take-home pack. And unfortunately, I can't seem to get to it right now without hunting out my password. But essentially, it's just every day, and it's 3 things. It's do a scavenger hunt, play a game, and read a story. But you could easily add a common chore, set the table. So you could use something like the, hold on, yeah, I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so now you see my very scary computer. Not quite sure what else is showing up there. You're seeing the Facebook from the other one. Okay. This is my resource library. And this is the silverware accounting templates. And they're really just designed for kids to match silverware and then count. They were made originally for a student who had been learning how to count to 5 he was still in middle school, and we were struggling with it. And so what you could do with this is then make a placemat jig and have them use the template of how many people are in their family. So in his family, there were 5, so the templates go up to 5. And he could lay out 5 forks, 5 knives, 5 spoons, and then go set the table. So that would be a life skill he could practice for a week or more. Things like that. So just think about life skills. Could he fold laundry? So I would make a calendar of those kinds of things. And I'm going to have to think more about it because it is a hard one to do. Let's see. Unshare my screen. Oh, let me show you one more thing while we're on this screen. If you have students that are working on science and social studies and you're concerned about what that's going to look like, one of the things that you can do, and I talk about this in the blog post, sorry, when I open things on the web, they look like this. And then we get to the page that should be the right size. Okay. Because I don't have it in Adobe at the moment. So this is, go over here. This is a scientific method graphic organizer. And you can do it with a lot of different things. And I'll try and do something with this as well. But I gave some examples in the blog post that you could say, plant 2 plants. Go dig up a weed in the backyard. Doesn't have to be seeds. Water one, don't water the other. Describe what you did. What did you guess would happen? So if your kids are a little bit higher, this is something that they could do, and they could use it multiple times to do different kinds of things. You can use it for almost any kind of problem solving. Same is true with the web search template. If you're looking at social studies, think about places that you would like them to learn about, and then have them do a web search on them and complete this. So that gives you some kind of work product. And those are free. Just sign up for the resource library. Okay, let me come back, and let me come back to questions. Ideas for early childhood special education, 3, 4, 5, and 6-year-olds. That's where I would do the reading, the You could do a cooking unit. This is actually in the next few days. I will have my cooking units up. If you're in the Special Educator Academy, you can go download the 3 cooking units, and they already have directions, a visual recipe, and so for instance, we're making English muffins pizzas in this one, and they've got sequencing, they've got questions to answer, and graphing that they can do, and there's lesson plans for that whole thing. They'll go up in the next couple days into my store. So cooking is a good thing to do with them. Life skills would be a good thing to do with them, helping mom. The games that I've talked about, Simon Says, they could practice. Very simple kinds of things like that, I think, are things that they could do. Reading a story, I don't know, I'm thinking, I've got some others that I'll have to think about. Sean, I'm going to come back to you in just a minute. We have very young, 5 and 6, severe, profound, nonverbal, and I'm really struggling to think of ways to help your families. Google slide versions of morning meetings and music group. I think that's an awesome thing to do. Take those tools and make them that way. Give your parents what books you think the students should read with them and questions that they could ask. One of the things that you could also do that would be great is make Post-it notes that you could put on the pages of the books so that they know when you get to this page, ask this question. That would be a way to get beyond just reading the story. Because a lot of people, you know, it's funny because I watch people from all walks of life do this kind of stuff. And I see this with parents, but I also see it with parents. And they sit down and read a book, and they read a book. They don't understand all the language that you really want to get out of that story. So at that point, you really kind of need to give them that kind of guidance. Yes. Emily says, specialized classroom teachers everywhere are struggling with this. Yes, we are. We all are. Meg says that each teacher is doing a daily Facebook video to give your families some ideas for your preschool kids. That's a great idea. And the other thing I would do is, especially for the life skills teachers and the preschool teachers, pick one thing in your classroom that you've been working on with your student life skills wise. Take a video if you still have your kids, which I know most of you don't right now. If you have them, take a video of you doing it with them. If not, recruit somebody else that you can demonstrate it with and do a short video and send it home. How are you teaching washing hands? And then send that home with the visuals. You know, show them how you're teaching them to put on their coat and send that home with the visuals. Those are the kinds of things that are going to be most likely to be implemented by families and not be as much of a burden on families because the kids have to do it anyway. And if you show them, you also eliminate the issue of the language barrier with many of our families, the literacy issues for some of our families. So it gives you a way to kind of build that. Any suggestions for helping your kiddos, kiddo focused and distance learning? I think the reinforcement piece is going to be key. So maybe one of the things that you send home a video about is how to use a token system. If you're in the academy and you want to download that video, let me know and I'll make it downloadable. And you can send that home, or you can make one on your own just saying, you know, we give him this every time he gets something right, or for every minute he's in his chair, he gets a token. When he gets to the end, he gets what's reinforcing. So making sure we're sending those things home, I think, is important. Yeah, simple things that parents can do without a lot of computer experience. That's actually where the scavenger hunts came from, was that exact thing. And I tried really hard to choose things that they would definitely have in their environment. So for instance, I was doing an office one and I didn't do a desk because I know a lot of families don't have desks in their house. You know, that's one of the reasons I did clothes and things like that. So, oh, Emily, I worry too. Yeah, I mean, mind you, you're talking to a person who sterilized my groceries yesterday when they came in the house. And I'm not a germaphobe. but I just couldn't help myself. And so I totally get that. And that is definitely an issue. It's one of the reasons why if they have computers and can download them, that problem goes away. But we may just have to do it with gloves and whatever to try to protect it and send it home because they're going to need the physical materials. Um, but I worry about a lot of things. Um, okay. Oh, a couple other resources that I wanted to share with you. I've lost my note. Um, okay, those were all my notes. Another one is, and I will put this link in when I get off of here. Some of you may be in situations where your school has access to TPT School Access. If you don't, I'm going to put a link that you can send your administrator to. TPT is opening up our school access program for free for folks who are not, for schools that are not subscribers. So it won't work necessarily for your individual people, but if you go to your school and you need, because you're going to need different materials, and we've struggled with that. And so it's a matter of trying to find some balance between supporting this and supporting us and all that kind of stuff. But TPT is opening up TPT School Access, which gives teachers a certain number of items that they can access for free every year. They are opening that up for free. So typically school districts buy a subscription, and from that money, the teachers can download a certain number of things a year. It's a brand new program we just started this year. They are leaving that open for free, I think, into the summer for the rest of the school year, for schools to sign up. So it doesn't help you as a teacher, but as a school, if your school signs up, you can get materials that way. Many of my pupils have clear ideas about what belong in school. You know, it's so funny. I just said that so many times yesterday, and I talked about it in our office hours on in the academy on Sunday, because I've had kids that I have to write social stories for because it's like, I'm not doing homework, that's schoolwork. Schoolwork doesn't belong at home. And that's going to be true for some of our other kids. It's also going to be true that they're not going to respond to their parents the same way that they respond to their teachers. We all behave differently for different people, and our students are no different. I have a friend who has an adult son with autism, and he cracks us up because he will not eat for her. He eats like a maniac for anyone else. But if she's in the room, he expects her to feed him, and he just shuts down. So don't be surprised by that either. And that's going to be frustrating for a lot of families. So it's going to be a gradual process. It isn't going to be something that we can do automatically overnight. And everybody is just going to have to be okay with that, as stressful as that is. The whole thing is hard. We all like structure. And, you know, the best thing I can say for you as people is build some structure of your own. Build what your routine looks like. When I went from working a 9-to-5 job into the world of, I work at home now and almost everything's on the computer, with the exception of some training that I go out and do, it was a big shift, because it was like, nobody's structuring my day for me. So, but it does get better. You just have to find that structure. And we're all trying to find our way, because now your kids are home, and, you know, the whole thing. That, and I can't stop watching the news. So those things are hard. All right. I have kept you guys long enough. I hope this gives you some ideas. I will definitely go put the links in now, so that you'll be able to access them. And I will continue to think about what your questions have been and see if I have more solutions for them. There will be probably more podcasts and blog posts coming. And if you think of things or you need something, I can't guarantee I have it or can give it to you, but share it in the comments or on the pages, and I will definitely get back with you. Deep breath, breathe in, breathe out. It's going to be okay. It's just an adjustment. We'll get there. All right. Everybody, go enjoy the rest of your day. and try not to watch the news. Bye.